Rabbi Manis Friedman. Hello. Thank God it's Tuesday. And the conversation that I just explained to our audience in Russian is about what has been happening in 770 in the Lubavitcher headquarters in the Rabbi's synagogue. And you've been very close with the Rabbi. You've been his translator. You're a huge part of Chabad Lubavitch, a very prominent member of Chabad Lubavitch. And I didn't really want to have this conversation last Tuesday. Everything came out on Monday. We could have done that, but I was hoping that it would not gain the momentum that it did, and it got a lot of momentum. Main Street media doesn't cover a lot of news, but this one they had a field day with. There's a lot of misinformation, kind of speculations, and a lot of different things that have been circulating in the last week. So we prefer to hear things from the source, especially the wise source that we have access to once a week, which is you, Rabbi Friedman. And we would like to understand what is going on, and most importantly, what lesson should we derive from everything that is going on, especially that has been coming out like a week, 2 weeks actually before Chabad, which is a huge day, which is Rabbi's Day. This is when Rabbi Schneerson became the rabbi of the Lubavitcher movement.
No, the Rebbe became Rebbe in 1950.
Oh, okay.
So it's been a few years. It is so crazy. Like, we've always wanted publicity. But not this kind of publicity.
No.
And the way this story caught on and the attention on 770, it's not normal. And it's very similar to all the attention is on Israel. There are problems all over the world, but nobody cares. Everybody's focused on Israel. As if something in Israel is earth-shattering, or I guess that tells us something. The world is obsessed with Jews. Why? We're a tiny, insignificant minority. Why is the world obsessed with us? It must be because we have something to tell the world that we're not telling them. Anyway, so what happened there was the news broke that there are secret tunnels being dug under 770. Well, just a few little details are off. Number one, it's not a tunnel. Number two, it's not under 770. Number three, it's not a secret. It was never meant to be a secret. Here's what's really going on. There's been a lot of talk that the shul, where people both learn and pray and daven, is too small. It can't handle the crowds, especially on Yom Tov. So there's been talk about expansion. The only way or room for expansion is towards the back. So 770 faces Eastern Parkway, and the back of it faces Union Street. So that would be the area of expansion, to build backwards from Eastern Parkway till Union. A bunch of guys decided that they're impatient and that the expansion should have started already, so they went ahead and they started the expansion. But they didn't rip up the walls of 770. They began from Union Street, excavating towards 770. So it was not a secret. It was meant to encourage the community to expand and to build. And, of course, it was illegal. We didn't know whether they had actually some engineers making sure that it's not going to bring down the whole building. So it was very wild and irresponsible and so on. People who have no authority, who have no rights, and so it had to be stopped. But it wasn't a tunnel. It was expanding the basement of the buildings on Union to reach the level, basement level of 770. So it was like a corridor that they were making, not a tunnel under 770.
Rabbi Friedman, but how would that help expand? I mean, I'm just a little confused. If this is a basement, it's not going to expand the actual place where people pray. It's something under. How would that expand it?
Well, 770 itself, not the original building, but the shul is a basement. You got to go down a few steps from the street. So they wanted to expand it. I don't think they actually intended to build the building. They just wanted people to wake up and get the job done. This group, by the way, it started a long time ago. It started with the idea that Hasidim can dictate to the Rebbe who he should be, what he should do. And they decided that we can force the Rebbe to become Mashiach. If we insist that he's Mashiach, we'll make him into Mashiach. Which is a wild and crazy attitude. And it did a lot of damage and a lot of harm. But it started this mentality, we're the boss, we need to do whatever we think is right, and that's how we're going to make things better. I mean, the attitude is great. The self-confidence is admirable, but it's totally crazy. Misplaced, misguided. And then, of course, it gets a little violent, and so arrogance leads to chutzpah. Chutzpah leads to misbehavior, and that eventually ends up being violent. So this group has got to be disciplined, has got to be restrained from their crazy thinking, that whatever good idea you have a right to act on it without any authority, without asking.
Does this group have a leader?
They've lost control. No, it doesn't. So here's an interesting thing. If we needed a model for what would Mashiach be like? A human being? A great human being? A very smart human being? A very influential human being? If you wanted a model, the Rebbe was a perfect model. Or the best we've ever seen. And so, when people wanted to explain what Mashiach is, to make it realistic, they would say somebody like the Rebbe. Well, some people took that very literally and said, not like the Rebbe, it's the Rebbe. And no matter how many times the Rebbe objected, they kept promoting and pushing and writing and waving flags. And one of the mistakes was the argument, the justification that they used was that the Rebbe didn't want to become Rebbe back in 1950, but we pressured and we demanded and eventually we forced him to become Rebbe. So now, if we insist long enough, we can force him to become Mashiach. I'm not even sure what that means. I mean, is it up to an individual whether he wants to be Mashiach or not? But that was the rationalization, which is wrong on two counts. Number one, when you pressure the Rebbe to become Rebbe, he was just a private citizen. Once you proclaim him Rebbe, now there's no pushing, push a Rebbe. It doesn't make any sense. Somebody said to the Rebbe, at dollars, the Rebbe should take 10,000 Chassidim and move to Israel. So the Rebbe said, you call me Rebbe and then you tell me what to do? If I'm a Rebbe, you listen to me. So that's one mistake. The second mistake is anybody who knows the Rebbe or who knew the Rebbe even as a teenager, you cannot force the Rebbe to do anything. In 1950, when they pressured the Rebbe and so on, and finally he accepted the leadership, you think it was because you pressured him? There's no pressuring. Just the Rebbe's character. Besides being a Rebbe, he doesn't get intimidated. You can't force him or pressure him. Or when Chassidim were sincere enough, and their interest was real, and they accepted his leadership in a healthy and honest way, then the Rebbe agreed, because it was the right thing to do, not because he was intimidated by the pressure. So you're misreading, you're misunderstanding the Rebbe completely. When Golda Meir was prime minister, the Rebbe was very outspoken about his disappointment that Israel keeps making concessions, and that every time there's a war, Israel accepts a ceasefire and the war never ends. And the Rebbe was very vocal about it. Golda Meir was annoyed with all the criticism. So she sent a message to the Rebbe that if he doesn't stop criticizing Israel, his Chassidim will not be allowed to visit soldiers, they won't be allowed to have tefillin booths at the kotel, and so on. So the Rebbe mentioned it at a Farbrengen, and he said, I have a strange nature. My nature is, if I'm told that I can't do something, I want to do it more. So don't threaten me. So the whole thing was just very immature, premature, and it had a terrible effect. People who used to respect Chabad as a responsible, realistic organization that moving Judaism and the Jewish people in a good direction, and all of a sudden they're dancing around with flags, and people said, oh, so you're not really a responsible organization. It was terrible. It is terrible. But, Chabad is very tolerant, even of its own. So somehow this went on for 30 years, and everybody knew and spoke about how wrong it is, but nobody actually did anything about it, and now maybe they will. So what do we learn from this? It's a balancing act. On the one hand, the Rebbe tells us over and over and over, it's all up to you. You have to bring Mashiach, not sit and wait for Mashiach. What we do makes the difference. And the sooner we do it, the better, etc., etc. And of course, that's true. On the other hand, if you just decide to do what you want to do because you think that that's how you bring Mashiach, that's pure nonsense. It's irresponsible. And it does the opposite. It delays the coming of Mashiach because it causes division and arguments and disagreements. Not a good thing. So how do we balance this? How do you have, on the one hand, full responsibility? Don't sit and sing, "We believe in Mashiach." Do something. Bring Mashiach. And on the other hand, who are you to decide what to do to bring Mashiach? It's a huge question about Judaism in general. The whole idea is to serve God, to do for God what God needs. Oh, you're going to do what God needs? Who do you think you are? So we have these two sides of the coin that seem to be a contradiction. There are those who actually are impressed by these guys and their initiatives. They think it's admirable. Because, yeah, we're supposed to do something to bring Mashiach. So, this week's parsha begins with the word boy. God says to Moshe, there have been 7 plagues so far. There are 3 more to come. So go to Pharaoh and warn him about the next plague. But the Hebrew word is not go, it's come. It's not lech, which would mean go. It's boy, which means come. Come to Pare. What does that mean? God is saying, I'm going, come with me. I'm going to Pare. I'm not sending you on your own. Let's go together. Come, we'll go to Pare. I guess Moshe needed to know that it's not a one-man show. He himself, by himself, cannot change Pare. So God has to be there to help him. It seems like it was becoming a little dangerous to keep threatening Pare. I mean, he was very patient for 7 plagues. How much more patient do you think he's going to be? And Moshe and Aaron walk themselves into the palace anytime they want, and then they threaten him. And he's a big king. He's a very powerful man. How long is he going to put up with this? So Moshe was getting a little worried, so God says, no, I'm going with you. But that doesn't really explain. Because it says, Boy el Pare, come with me to Pare. Not I'm coming to help you. I'm going to Pare. How? In what way was God going to Pare? And if God is going to Pare, what do you need Moshe for? I'm sure God can handle it. The objective was that Pare should realize that all his idols are false and that there's only one true God. that would redeem Egypt from its ugliness, from its lowliness, from its unholiness. So the plagues were not there to destroy Egypt. They were there to refine. It was for the benefit of Egypt as well, which of course is always the case. It's not good guys and the bad guys lose. The good guys succeed, so the bad guys become better. That's the Torah plan, except for Amalek, who can't be redeemed. In the end, the Egyptians start saying to Pare, "Don't you see this is the finger of God? Who are you fighting with? Let the people go already." See, it's working. Pare is still not convinced until the 9th plague, where Pare says, "God is right, I've been wrong." So Pare was not an ignorant, stubborn fool. So the question is, if God is going to Pare, what do you need Moshe for? And in what way is God coming to Pare? God never spoke to him. He didn't deserve to have God speak to him. A message in a dream was enough. So here's the story. When people recognize God, and, all through history there were those who recognized God, the only way that is possible is if God makes himself knowable and available. Because as a rule, creation means God hides, so that we have freedom of choice. If God was obvious and revealed, we wouldn't have freedom of choice. But God wants to be known, so in tiny increments, he makes himself more available every year. Every year. Since the beginning of creation, 5,784 years ago, God has become much more knowable, much more tangible than in the earlier years.
Rabbi Friedman, how do we see this? Where do we see this?
Well, first of all, everybody in the world knows that there's a God. This was not the case in the times of Avraham, for example. Not that they didn't believe in God. They always believed in God. You couldn't not, especially in the early years, closer to creation. How could they not know they were created by a creator? So the belief was there. The knowledge of God was not. They believed that there is a great God in heaven, but earth belongs to us, and we got to do the best we can because God is not going to get involved. Which is nonsense, because God is very involved. He created it. So you can't say he created it, but it's too low for him to be concerned. It's foolish. But that's how people believed, that God is a great creator. He created the world, and now he has more important things to do. So you have to rely on the idols. You want to live and have what to eat? Pray to the sun. You want relief from the sun and a little peace and quiet in the evening? Pray to the moon. So the forces of nature are now in charge because God is in heaven. Slowly over the years, God came down to earth. Whatever it is you need, you ask God. You don't go to intermediaries. You don't go to ministers. You go to God. So the idea that God is involved and God is engaged has become universally known. So, for Pharaoh to be able to recognize God, not believe, because he already believed. I mean, he believed in sheep. He certainly believed in God. But he was convinced that God is indifferent. So when Moshe said, God wants us to celebrate, he said, oh, come on. God doesn't even know you exist. You're not important enough for God to even notice you. He wants you to come out and make sacrifices. Don't be crazy. In the end, Pare said, go, God is waiting for you. Yeah, big change. But that can only happen if God moves a little closer and makes himself a little more tangible, knowable, understandable, even to Pare. So this is what God is saying. We want Pare to see the truth. In order for that to happen, I have to go to him, make myself more knowable. But the way it's going to happen practically is you're going to talk to Pare and you're going to tell him that another plague is coming. And each plague humbled him a little more until he was able to see God. But no amount of humility enables you to see God if God is hiding. If he doesn't want you to see him, there's nothing you can do. So God says, I'm going to reveal myself a little more so that Pharaoh can know me. But he's going to have to be humbled a little more. So you do the humbling, and I'll make myself available to him. So I don't know if we talked about this last week. Did we? About Pare? That he was really a very special guy? Did we talk about that?
No. Was he a special guy?
He must have been, because Torah devotes so much space, so many chapters about him. So the first question is, if God wanted to take the Jews out of Egypt, did he really need Pare's approval? Tell Pare to let the people go. Oh, he said no. What are we going to do? 10 times? So the really big question is, why does God need Pare's approval? You can't leave Egypt without a written certificate? Why did Pare have to say yes? Why not just kill Pare and take the Jews out? So God is very patient with Pare and wants him to agree. So this is not just your run-of-the-mill dictator who just needs to be eliminated. The other interesting thing, Batya, who was described as the daughter of Pare, wasn't really his biological child. She was adopted. He adopted her. Now, if he was simply a monster who likes to kill babies and bathe in their blood, such people don't adopt. They kidnap, they rape, they don't adopt. He adopted her. And even more than that, she comes home with a Jewish baby and says, I want to adopt this baby, knowing that he's Jewish, which was Moshe. And Pharaoh says, fine. And Moshe grows up in Paro's palace. This is not a monster. Even the argument that Pharaoh made, for not letting them go. It's a pretty convincing argument. It's not simply no. His first reaction to Moshe was, are you getting lazy or something? You're here doing amazing work. You're building the most sophisticated society in history. We are the future. You want to go into a desert? What? Become a nomad? You'll become meaningless in history. And you're going to die there because you don't know what you're doing. It's so irresponsible. So it must be that you have too much free time and you're getting lazy. So I think you should work a little harder. And he made it harder. That is a very cogent argument. Like, really? You want to go out into the desert looking for God? That's cuckoo. And he actually said, you're going to end up killing yourself. It always happens to these people. They drink the Kool-Aid. So finally, after a few plagues, Pharaoh says, okay, fine. You're crazier than I thought. You really are hung up on this thing, so take 10 men and go. Go do your religious thing. Moshe says, not 10 men. We got to go with our children, with our wives, our older people, and our younger people. Pare says, oh, you're even crazier than I thought. That is so irresponsible, I changed my mind. You can't go. Does that sound like an unreasonable human being? Then at the sea, the Torah says, all the Egyptians drowned till the very last one. And the sages say, till the very last one, but the very last one did not die. Who was that? Pharaoh. God is treating him very nicely. He's getting special treatment, privileged treatment. You know what happens eventually? He can't go back to Egypt. He's disgraced. So he wanders around, Pharaoh. And the next time we meet him is when Jonah, after the fish spits him out, goes to Nineveh to deliver the prophecy. Nineveh is a non-Jewish city or state. He comes and he says to the people in the street, repent or in 40 days Nineveh will be destroyed. Word reaches the king, and the king decrees a fast. For 3 days, no one should eat anything or drink anything, and not even feed the cattle. And they all did tshuva, and the city was saved. Who was the king of Nineveh? Good old Pharaoh. So, moral of the story is this. God makes himself more known, but you have to be willing. So God asks Moshe, come, tell the people, talk to them, reason with them, get them ready and willing so that they can appreciate my coming closer and my revealing myself to them. That's why it had to be both, God and Moshe. The same is true with Mashiach. You can't bring Mashiach on your own. When Mashiach is ready to come, he's not going to force himself on the world has to accept him. So the Rebbe keeps telling us, we have to prepare the world for Mashiach. Why? Because Mashiach is ready. If Mashiach wasn't ready, well, then there's nothing you can do to bring him. On the other hand, the fact that he's ready, that's not enough. We also have to be ready. It's a relationship. So Moshe's job is to get Pharaoh ready. And God's job is to make himself more available. So those are the two sides of bringing Mashiach. You bring Mashiach the way he wants to be brought. Not any way you think. And you certainly don't have the authority to make Mashiach arrive. You have to humble the world so that they will accept the wisdom that Mashiach will offer.
Rabbi Friedman, but that is exactly the confusing part. How did what just took place can humble the world? And if we are supposed to bring light onto the nations, and we're supposed to be the learned ones, and educate the world about the righteousness, the goodness, the morality of this world, the way God has intended it, and something like this happens, is it a huge setback for us? Does it tarnish us? How does it affect the movement of bringing the Mashiach?
So imagine if we went to the newspapers and we said, can you announce to the world that we are getting ready for Mashiach? There'd be nothing. This got everybody's attention. In a very negative way, but that's what gets attention, right?
Unfortunately.
Now that we have the attention, we have to clear the air. And as long as the attention is there, we can tell them about Mashiach. So it is a distasteful and embarrassing step backwards. But if we use it properly, it can launch us forward a lot more. So, I mean, that's true with every negative. It always happens for a reason. So, we've got the attention of the world. The world wants to know about Mashiach, not necessarily using that word, but the world wants to know, is there a future? We're so leaderless, will there ever be a real leader? The whole world is very ready, and Mashiach is ready. Now we need to get the people to pay attention so that Mashiach's message can be received properly. So no, this is very briefly, like the 15 minutes of fame. This is going to be the 15 minutes of infamy. And then people will lose interest and turn to other things. But they will know that there's something about 770 that they need to learn. The good part.
Rabbi Friedman, yeah, I'm sorry.
The world is getting better, not worse. Oh yeah? Look what happened in 770. Yeah. What happened in 770? A non-event turned into a global crisis. Like,
absolutely.
Why? Oh, they had mattresses and they had... What in the world?
Yeah, there is a lot of crazy talk, but there has to be a spark to ignite a fire. So we definitely did have a spark. And unfortunately, this also raises another very important questions. Somehow people who are not learned, who are not observant, they look at the people with the black hats who study Torah or pray properly to be the leaders. It's like it's a foolproof plan. If you study Torah, if you pray 3 times a day, if you do everything you're supposed to do in accordance to the Torah, then it's foolproof plan. You're a good person. You're smart. You're a good leader. You're very special. You are definitely a holy person. And unfortunately, we do come to a realization that it's not the case. And the question is, why isn't it the case? Don't we read the same books? Don't we study the same text? Don't we have good teachers that lead us and direct us? Where is this disconnection?
That's a very painful question. That all those mitzvahs and all that learning, and you still don't get it. That's very painful, but also very true. You can read all the good books and hear all the good ideas, but your character is still stronger than your knowledge, and you behave according to your personality and character, not always according to what you've learned and what you know. Particularly when it comes to the subject of Mashiach, we don't have a precedent. So it's like, let's see, when's the last time Mashiach came, and we'll do the same thing. He never came before. So it kind of leaves things open to people's imagination. We're supposed to bring Mashiach? When's the last time that happened? It never happened. Well, then how do you do it? So we know we do it by making the world more godly. Oh, well, how do you do that? So yeah, it can be an open field where everybody can interpret it the way they want and do it the way they think it should happen. But the Rebbe told us very clearly, the way it happens is the deeper aspects of Torah need to become known to the world. They all know about the Bible. Now they need to know the rest of the story.
Rabbi Friedman, amazing. Thank you so much. Israel got a lot of attention very recently. Now Chabad is getting a lot of attention right now, right this second. Israel came to the good realization, unfortunately, through a very painful incident, a painful event. And this is painful. This is painful for Chabad. This is painful for everyone who I speak to who is who considers them part of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, who belong, who consider Rabbi to be the leader, and 770 to be our holiest of the holies. It's painful for us, and hopefully this shake-up will be the right kind of shake-up through pain. Unfortunately, this seems to be the best way to learn in this day and age. Hopefully that'll be over soon.
It is a wake-up call, and it's going to be effective, and things are just going to continue getting better.
God willing. Amen. Thank you so much, Rabbi Friedman, for another very enlightening, very positive, and very wise hour. Really appreciate your time, and I just want to let people know there that you have 2 classes coming up, as far as I know, two study sessions that sound very interesting: the Torah Bible Study program and the Torah Inspired Coach Certification program. I'm particularly interested in that one. So it's very exciting, and anybody who wants to check it out can go on itsgoodtoknow.org and find out more information. And thank you so much. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for continuing to push us forward, to giving us wisdom, positivity, and inspiration every single day. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Until next week, hopefully with a lot of good news to share. I hope. Thank you.